The mere mention of Moe, Larry, and Curly evokes hilarious images of classic shenanigans. A vaudeville act rediscovered with television, their legions of fans would describe them as perfect. The extraordinary life of the Three Stooges. Next on Biography.
Hello, I'm Jack Perkins. Welcome to Biography. One of the highlights of being a kid in the 50s and 60s was coming home from a hard day at school, turning on the TV, and watching three grown men act like idiots. The numbskulls in question were, of course, the Three Stooges. The trio had been putting their head-knocking, eye-poking, and nose-yanking antics on film for nearly a quarter of a century, but it was television that turned them into superstars. Tonight, the story of the men behind the mayhem.
Stop chewing that gum. Look, I got rid of it. Wait a minute, hold still. I'll get it. Ow! Ow, my nose! Hey, you're in a court, not in the woods, Tarzan. Cut it out. Come on.
When I was growing up, I saw the Three Stooges frequently in the movies, Saturday mornings, and I thought, gosh, this is going to be kind of fun to work with these guys.
But if you took the time to look at the other side of the screen, you'd see, and I began watching that, and then I began paying attention to his voice, and I realized that how much Larry was like the Keith Richard of the Stooges.
They were on 3 times on the Sunday night show, with Ed Sullivan. I can't tell you how many different places they were on, and getting pretty good money then.
Almost everyone is familiar with the screen characters of Curly, Moe, and Larry, and most people know Shemp, Joe Besser, and Curly Joe. These 6 men formed the world's most loved comedy team, the Three Stooges.
The Three Stooges were tremendous. They honed an act in the 40s that was unbelievable, and they honed it as well as anybody's ever honed it.
The humor, the themes that they, that they play on are sort of universal kind of themes. Blue collar versus white collar, authority figure versus the powerless.
If you're genuinely funny and make people laugh, comedy's timeless, and they had a certain charisma.
People never, even today, do not know about all the talents of show people. They see one side and not all.
This is the other side of the story, the men behind the mayhem.
Hey, miss, would you like to get married?
What?
Get married.
Well, I don't know, but you are kind of cute at that.
Oh, it's not me, it's him.
Believe it or not, Moe wasn't always the leader of the Three Stooges. In fact, when they first started, the boys were practically interchangeable. The development of their screen characters was a slow process of evolution which took years of refinement.
Do that again. Do that again.
He's wrong.
Well, this is the way, isn't it?
In the beginning, the Stooges worked for a brilliant vaudeville comedian who essentially created the concept of Stooges. Ted Healey had been born Charles Ernest Lee Nash on October 1st, 1896 in Houston. He moved to New York with his parents and grew up planning to pursue a career in business, but was bitten by the showbiz bug early on. Changed his name to Ted Healey and found his niche on Broadway, which is where he also found his first wife, Betty Braun. During the winter of 1922, they were appearing at the Prospect Theater in Brooklyn, where Ted had a visit from a boyhood pal. It was this chance meeting that would alter the course of Ted's life and the history of film comedy. That friend was Moe Howard, born Moses Horowitz on June 19, 1897. The Horowitz family was a large one, like most families of the time, and Jenny and Solomon had 4 boys, Jack, Irving, Sam, who became Shemp, and Moe, who was the youngest, although that changed 6 years later with the birth of Jerome, whom you might know as Curley. Moe was always fascinated by the theater. As a boy, he spent most of his time at local playhouses. He would see a show several times and concentrate on just one performer, a practice which served him well when he entered show business himself.
I was in many films from 1908 to 1911. I must have been in 40 or 50 films. A Vitagraph company in Brooklyn. I honed my way into the studio by asking if they wanted me to go for sandwiches.
In 1914, Moe ran away from home to get an acting job on a showboat in Jackson, Mississippi. After working for 2 seasons on the Sunflower, Moe returned home and several months later started a vaudeville act with his brother Shemp called Howard and Howard. They worked vaudeville circuits, achieving moderate success until the winter of 22, when Moe discovered that his old friend Ted Healey was headlining at the Prospect Theater. This meeting was essentially the birth of the Stooges.
Well, there's controversy as to who were the first Stooges. I think everybody sort of agrees that Ted Healey was the #1 Stooge, and he was a big vaudeville burlesque-type comedian who was very popular in his day, and he was boyhood friends with Shemp and Moe Howard growing up in the same neighborhood. If you listen to Moe and his family, they sort of think Moe was the first Stooge. If you listen to Shemp and his people, he was the first Stooge. What it seems like in the early years, there were various Stooges floating in and out of the act. As one got married and had children, he left for a little while. Another person would come by and replace him. But basically, it was Ted, Moe, and Shemp, some combination. They picked up Larry after seeing him at a show in Chicago.
Enter Louis Feinberg, better known as Larry Fine.
Larry was born on October the 5th, 1902. He was born in Philadelphia, and the address was 606 South 3rd Street. At that time, my father had a jewelry store at that address, and my parents lived in an apartment above the store.
Larry was the first of 4 children, followed by Morris, Philip, who died during the influenza epidemic of 1919, and a sister, Lila.
Jewelers use acid to test gold, and so my father had a bottle with acid in it. I don't remember what kind of acid it was, but Larry, as a little boy, was curious like other little boys, and he put his hand up and he pulled this acid down, and it burned right over here on his arm. He had this very bad acid burn, and he could not use his left hand. He was left-handed. So the doctors suggested learning to play the violin actually as an exercise to practice using the hand. So they didn't know what else to get a youngster of his age to do to use the hand. That's how he began playing the violin.
Music would influence the rest of Larry's life.
He was always an outgoing child. He was always an outgoing person as he grew up. He was active in school, but more in the sense that he was a musician. Larry was studying to be a concert violinist. He played the violin in the school orchestra even when he was in elementary school, and he was an excellent violinist. So most of his early years were spent studying the violin, but he had a need to be funny. This was within, it was born in him, I guess you'd say.
Larry also loved sports. He tried boxing under the name of Kid Roth. That career ended quickly. And he returned to the theater, still finding time to graduate from Philadelphia Central High School. But it seemed that Larry was destined to be an entertainer. He worked in dozens of acts. One in particular stands out because he met his future wife, Mabel Haney. Larry's association with Mabel led to an act called the Haney Sisters and Fine. But Larry was working as an MC at Fred Mann's Rainbow Gardens in Chicago when fate stepped in.
Ted Healey was working in Chicago with Shemp and Mo Howard, who were his Stooges. I don't recall which one of them. I think it was Shemp who went to see the show. And he came back and told Ted, I saw someone that I think would fit into our act very well.
So Healey said, would you like to be one of the Stooges, make 3 out of the 2, you know? He said, yes, I'd love that. He says, okay, I'll give you $90 a week. Fine. He said, I'll give you an extra 10 if you throw that fiddle away.
In 1925, Mo married Helen Schoenberger, and shortly afterwards, Shemp married Gertrude Frank, whose nickname was Babe. The 4 boys worked the vaudeville circuit until Ted and Shemp left to join a Broadway show called A Night in Spain. During this period, Larry married his sweetheart, Mabel Haney, and eventually he and Mo rejoined Ted and Shemp in the Broadway show A Night in Venice, which became a hit. This paved the way for better bookings and eventually an appearance at the prestigious Palace Theater on Broadway. A talent scout from Fox Studios hired them for Rube Goldberg's feature Soup to Nuts. Healey was making over $1,000 a week, while the Stooges' salary remained at the usual $100 a week.
See, the Stooges were my father's employees, and they came as an act, and he was the one that was paid, and he paid them. And this caused a lot of friction, especially with Mo, because he was a better businessman than probably any one of the other 4 were.
They didn't like the pay inequity, but in their eyes it was a shot at the big time. Unfortunately, the film only received lukewarm reviews, but hands down, Ted Healey's Stooges were the hit. Obviously, Fox studio heads noticed the great reviews for the boys and decided to offer them a contract without Ted. Of course, when he caught wind of the deal, he went to the Fox brass and nixed it. In his eyes, they were breaking up his act, and after all, they were his employees. When the Stooges learned the deal was off, they decided to strike out on their own.
3 boys left Ted Healey because they were offered more money in the RKO Orpheum circuit. How much, I don't know. So he needed 3 replacements. They couldn't use the name of Healey Stooges, of the 3 Stooges. So they called themselves Howard, Fine, and Howard. Shemp, Moore, and Larry. Now, Ted's got an audition of Stooges. Now, I never saw that type of comedy before. You hit each other, poke your eyes. I never saw that. I never saw their act till I got an audition. I went to an audition, and I went up to say hello to Ted. He gave me a bang in the head you never saw in your life, and I got so mad. I jumped on him, bit his ear, grabbed his nose, hit him back. He says, you're hired. Get in the corner. You know why he did that? Get the reaction from you. That was the whole thing.
Ted had his new Stooges performing pretty much the same material Mo, Larry, and Shemp had done.
What are you, wise guy? Wait a minute! Let me see you make a hot fist. Let me see you make a hot fist. Wait a minute! Pay me the $50,000, I'll foreclose this mortgage, you mouse. I won't pay it. Pay me the $50,000, I'll foreclose this mortgage, you mouse. I won't pay it. Don't get excited after the mortgage. Pay me the $50,000 or I'll foreclose. I won't pay it. For goodness sake, pay the money.
So he was good to work for. When he was not drinking, boy, he was a college graduate, you know, went to college. Ted did, and he always was a good actor, but he developed to be a great personality. He was the closest thing, as far as telling jokes, but as far as personality, the closest thing I ever seen to Jolson.
See, he was the first person that ever played comedy off of somebody else. Up to his point in time, comedy was always a Charlie Chaplin, or Harold Lloyd type thing where some guy was funny and he was the whole show. And he played off somebody else with the Stooges.
While Ted was working with his new Stooges, Howard, Fine, and Howard were creating comedy of their own.
Supposedly, Shem came up with the eye poke during a card game in which Larry beat him or something, and he was mad, and he just hauled off and poked him right in the eye, and Mo thought it was so funny that he fell out of his chair laughing and said that's going to stay in the act, and that was probably one of the few things that the Stooges actually invented themselves. All the other things, the pie fights and the slapping and all that had been done for many years before.
Even though Ted had his other Stooges, the chemistry just wasn't the same, and he continued to press the original Stooges into returning.
I think the reason he hired us when the Three Stooges, it was for revenge for the three guys to see that they can be replaced. Not saying we are as good, which I don't think we were, but that was his mind that he knew we weren't as good. And finally, thank God, we went to Ted and said, Ted, we'd like to do our own act. He didn't fire us. And about 2 weeks later, we were rehearsing, we walked down Broadway, and I see Ted with the three guys.
On a promise to avoid drinking, Ted won the Stooges back. But again, change was waiting in the wings. A&E's look at the Three Stooges will continue.
Restored people's faith in the quality of American luxury cars, but it has a way of rejuvenating the soul as well.
You can tell a lot about a man by his shaver. The man who uses a bra and flex control appreciates good looks, has the flexibility to adjust to any situation, and he's not afraid to get close. But the most revealing thing about a man who uses a bra is how easy it is to spot him.
I believe this is yours.
Braun, the world's most recognized shave.
Most people would jump at the chance. 10 days in South America. But I've done this before. I knew better.
¿Dónde está el teléfono?
Your phone's in the Admiral's Club.
This was business, and I was 5,000 miles from home. There was a lot at stake, and I was on my own. Trying to keep my bearings. Trying to negotiate. Sometimes just trying to communicate. All the while hoping to pull this whole thing off as soon as possible so I could head back.
Projection. 6-7 million pesos to your bottom line over the next 5 years.
Yeah, I'm sorry, honey. It's gonna be another day.
My father asked us.
You know, it's funny, being away so long. When you come across something familiar, it can be a pretty welcome sight.
Going home, Mr. Reynolds?
I'm halfway there.
Biography returns to the Three Stooges. Shemp decided he wanted to leave the Healey act for good.
Apparently his wife did not like Ted Healey, and there's some various stories floating around. Some pranks that Healey pulled that Shemp and his wife didn't take too kindly to, and eventually Shemp just went out on his own. He'd had a very successful career on his own, but I don't think he made the kind of money that the Stooges ultimately made at Columbia.
In 1932, Shemp got the opportunity to play the character Nobby in Joe Palooka pictures on the coast. And it seemed like a great opportunity for Shemp. And he was reluctant about leaving. He said, well, what are you going to do for a third man? I said, Shemp, don't worry about that. Grab your opportunity and we'll get the kid brother Curley in. And Curley was working with a band called Orville Knapp and his band. He was a comedy guest conductor. And it got a big laugh. So we got in touch with Curley and said, give your man 2 weeks' notice. Come on, you're going to join with us.
When he hit his stride, Curley became the perfect stooge. In 1933, Ted Healey and his Stooges signed a contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studio. In their 1 year at MGM, they appeared in 6 feature pictures with big stars like Clark Gable, Joan Crawford, Laurel and Hardy. And they starred in a series of 5 two-reel short subjects, some of which were written as wraparounds for dance numbers that were filmed but never used. MGM even filmed some of their shorts in color.
They did a couple shorts that were in a experimental, I think it's called a two-strip Technicolor, and I'm not a real technical guy, but it was a very early form of Technicolor that they were experimenting with, and it's kind of lousy looking color, but it's color, and it's from 1933. It's very unusual.
Although the feature films and short subjects were well received by the public, the Stooges' relationship with Ted began to deteriorate.
Their complaint was two things. One, that he drank too much, and two, that he didn't give him enough money. And I think the latter was really the problem.
I think primarily because A, of his drinking, and B, because of the inequity in the pay scale. The Stooges were getting a lot of the laughs, but they weren't getting any of the money. And I think they felt that they could be just as good without him and make a lot more money, and they had to deal with a lot of his stuff. He was drunk a lot of the time, and ultimately they just decided to go on their own.
So Ted stayed with MGM, and the boys set out as a trio. It was decided that Moe would handle the business affairs and essentially step into the Healey role.
Off screen, he was very much like what he was like on screen. Not that he was mean and nasty, but he was clearly the leader of the group. He was probably the one who made most of the financial decisions and arranged a lot of the bookings and things like that, and decided what was best for the team. It seemed like he was the one who had the biggest say.
Moe landed a one-film deal at Columbia. If the results were favorable, the studio would offer them a long-term contract. So the boys co-starred with Marjorie White in a 20-minute short subject called Woman Haters. And as soon as they finished, they began writing a treatment for another comedy called A Symphony of Punches and presented that to studio heads, who were so impressed that the boys were given a 7-year contract with yearly options. A Symphony of Punches was retitled Punch Drunks and became their second short. But more importantly, Howard Fine and Howard finally received the billing that would stay with them forever. They became the Three Stooges.
We did nine films a year, and we had, under the contract, we did those in 40 weeks. We had 12 weeks off, in which we did personal appearances.
The Stooges began to develop into recognizable characters.
Larry with the bushy hair, he was, you see, he couldn't talk tough to me because that would be the wrong thing to do. He'd have belt in the mouth anyhow if he did. And Curley was just that simp, you know. He was just big enough and strong enough that anything I said or did, he could break me in half. But his only retaliation was, woo! Every time we were in a personal appearance in the theater, every time I smacked Curley, somebody would always holler, hit him back, Curley, hit him back. And they'd throw caramels at me and everything. You know, if we were going through a scene and he'd forget his words for a moment, you know, rather than get stunned or pale and stop, you never knew what he was going to do. On one occasion, he'd go down to the floor and spin around like a top until he remembered what he had to say.
Curley's wild expressions and childlike mannerisms made him the favorite Stooge. Off camera, he could be very private and shy. He had been born on October 27, 1903. He was 6 years younger than his brother Moe. When Curley was 13, he accidentally shot himself in the ankle while hunting, nearly bled to death. It was Moe who rushed him to the hospital and saved his life. In fact, the injury left Curley with a permanent limp and would trouble him throughout his career. When he was with his brothers or close friends, Curley would become the life of the party. He would sing, dance, drink, play instruments. But if his gang wasn't around, he would simply turn inward. When he became a star, he could afford to overindulge himself.
I saw him at a couple of clubs in New York. And he danced every dance. And between dances, he was drinking. Never stopped. He lived the life of three men.
Curley was always slipping money to me. That was his way of treating me well. He'd always slip a quarter to me. Here, kid, go buy something, you know? Or he'd go out with me and buy me something. He was always doing that to me.
He apparently had a very sad lifestyle, sort of a lonely person, loved dogs. Apparently every time he went on the road and came home with a new dog. But his personal life was somewhat sad in that he was remarried, 4 times, and never seemed to find the right girl.
Although his private life was troubled, his work with Moe and Larry was unparalleled.
He seemed to be the center of interest. I mean, they all worked together, but to me, I think he was the most delightful of the way he looked, and just make you laugh. But I think Moe and Larry, this worked like teamwork. I mean, it wasn't guesswork with them. They practiced, they knew exactly what they were doing, and it came across.
Well, they didn't do any writing. Usually they had writers that wrote the scripts for them, but there was a lot of leeway in the scripts. Not that everything they did was ad-libbed, but there might be a part where it just would say, Stooges do their thing, and then a few minutes of mayhem would ensue with all this stuff. So there was some room for them to maneuver, and I'm sure they had such a working relationship with the producers and directors that if something just wasn't coming out right, they changed it around to make it funny.
Sit down!
You're in a court, not in Clancy's pool room. Sit down.
I'm a victim of circumstance.
Who are you hitting? Go on. Be quiet.
The Stooges' physical style of comedy often left them open to injury.
According to Lila Budnick, Larry's face was calloused on the one side where Moe slapped him. His left cheek was always raw and calloused because Moe was slapping him with the right hand across his left cheek.
His little jaw was like the back of your heel. That's how tough it was. You could hit Larry across the jaw, I don't think you would ever felt it. He was that calloused. From constantly being hit, it was nothing but constantly, day after day being hit. But he was used to it.
In December of 1937, Moe, Larry, and Curly were on their way to an appearance in Boston when they received word that their friend and old partner, Ted Healey, had died.
There's a lot of controversy over the way he died. He was supposedly involved in a barroom brawl. The circumstances surrounding the brawl and who were the participants in the brawl are still subject to conjecture to this day. But after this brawl, he supposedly went back to his hotel room and was found dead there the next day. And it was only maybe 3-4 days after the birth of his first child. So it was a very sad set of circumstances.
Ted is not what they think he is, what they write about. He was a nice man. Only bad thing, he was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. When he drank, he was Mr. Hyde. It's too bad. We lost a great talent when he died at the age of 41. He was, I don't care, he was a genius. One for him would be those Stooges.
And he would drag me on the stage, force me to sing on stage, and I was never more than a foot away from him when we were on the road. And of course, when he died, I was heartbroken because I loved him dearly.
They had a stormy relationship. But they were boyhood friends with him, I think there was always a place in their hearts for him. They liked him. They were friends with him. But he just, went a little too far, and, they really had no choice but to leave him. When they found out he passed away, I think they were truly upset, and they were shocked, obviously, number one. But I think they were very upset because although they did have a stormy relationship, they had known him for a long time. They were friends with him.
I've thought about many times the fact that he's the one that started it all. And without him, there would have been no Stooges. And the fact that he was celebrating my birth, which caused his death, of course, is highly unusual. It's very strange.
A&E's look at the Three Stooges will continue.
When the person who doctors the family gets a cough and cold, everyone suffers.
Mom, someone took my sleeve.
I earned it myself. Time to doctor that cough with Robitussin, because more doctors and pharmacists recommend Robitussin than any other cough medicine.
Look, Mom's feeling better. Uh-oh.
Robitussin, recommended by Dr. Mom. Which Robitussin is right for you? Ask your doctor or pharmacist. And also try Robitussin cough drops from the cough experts.
This holiday season, while you're shopping, we'll be dropping a ton of money in the Discover Card Big Payback. Now, every time you use your card, you're automatically entered in our holiday sweepstakes. The more you shop, the more chances you have to win. Weekly bonus prizes of $50,000 or land the ultimate $1 million grand prize. It pays to discover. The card with the big payback.
From Watergate to Whitewater, the press and the president. I'm Bill Curtis. Join us for investigative reports tonight here on A&E.
exciting holiday ever begins at Oz, the unique little shop on 15th at the Broken Arrow Expressway. Oz has convenient parking and is a Christmas oasis, so you can avoid the holiday crunch with one stop at Oz, where personal service and the diversity of gift items will please everyone on your list. There are hundreds of great gift ideas under $10, from clothes to jewelry to stocking stuffers. Oz, Tulsa's most unique gift emporium, 2629 East 15th at the Broken Arrow Expressway.
Anything. The Thrifty Nickel is fun, fast, and easy. And it works. Looking for something special? Looked everywhere? Just pick up a Thrifty Nickel. It's probably in there. Got something to sell? Want to know how? Just put it in there. Get money now. The Thrifty Nickel. Thrifty Nickel. Now this is news you can use.
Biography returns to the Three Stooges. Stooge comedies often incorporated contemporary events into the plots. During World War II, the Stooges were one of the first teams to parody Hitler in their two shorts, You Nasty Spy and I'll Never Heil Again. Curly, Moe, and Larry were Jewish, and these films reflected a political statement as well as a personal one.
Oh, he was quite upset about it, naturally. I mean, anyone who cared about people was upset. And then you have to remember, we're Jewish. And so the war in Germany and what went on in Germany before the war with Hitler and all was extremely upsetting to all of us. I think when he was younger, when he wasn't one of the Stooges, and he was playing in vaudeville in the little acts in small towns, he was given a hard time in some small towns where they put him in bathrooms to dress, or they wouldn't let him, go outside and dress in the backyard or something, or, get that little Jew out of here. But you hear that today. So it doesn't surprise you. The only difference is that 50 or 60 years ago, you kept your mouth shut. Today, you don't.
Stooges' shorts were more popular than ever, but Curly's health was beginning to deteriorate. The stress of Curly's personal life had begun to take its toll. He had been married 3 times, suffered from high blood pressure, and was rapidly gaining weight. In May of 1946, Curly suffered a paralyzing stroke on the set of Half-Wit's Holiday, which forced him to retire from the act. Moe believed that after some rest, Curly would be able to return, so in the meantime, he convinced his older brother, Shemp, to rejoin the group.
Well, he fit right into the act because he had been the original third Stooge, so there was no problem in that sense. From the general public standpoint, I know today people think that he was a weak replacement for Curly, but those are the people that don't know he was the original Stooge. I think a lot of people also think Shemp was trying to imitate Curly, and he was really not in any way. He just did his own thing. He was in 100 or more films on his own. Between 33, 34, and 46. During that 13-year period, he was probably in 90 or 100 films on his own. He had his own series of which he was the star at Columbia, where there were several. It was the Shemp Howard series, and he was the head Stooge, and the other people were the knuckleheads.
Shemp Howard had been born Samuel Horowitz on March 17, 1895. According to Moe, their mother had a very thick accent, and when she called out for her son Sam, it came out sounding like Shem. When his brothers took to calling him Shemp, the name stuck.
Shemp was the most darling man I've ever known. He also was kind to me as a child, because you have to remember the original group was Larry, Moe, and Shemp.
He knocked me out when he was serious. That's when he was scared to death of his own shadow. He walked down the street, he's always looking back if there's anybody following him. And when he'd go in the hotel room, he'd lock the doors and put chairs by it so nobody can get in, lock the windows. Always waking up, see if anybody's there. He's scared. He's that type of guy. That's why he's always walking around that way. He was that way, That was his character.
Off camera, Shemp was a laid-back family man. He preferred to spend his free time playing with his son Mort or at a boxing match. But on screen, he was wild and unpredictable. In 1947, Curley was still partially paralyzed, but feeling better. He made a small cameo appearance, with a full head of hair, in the short Hold That Lion. It was the only time the Howard brothers, Moe, Shemp, and Curley appeared on screen together. Although, according to Larry, Curley was set to have a cameo in the 1949 short Malice in the Palace. The scene was shot, but wasn't used in the final print. Curley's health was still shaky, but he had finally found what he was looking for. On July 31st, 1947, he married a beautiful young woman named Valerie Newman. They had a baby girl named Janie, and for the first time in his life, Curley was content.
They got married in 1947, and he died in 1952. They had a good marriage, and they seemed to have a lot of good times together. Unfortunately, into the marriage that he got strokes and became sick after I was born. She would want him at home as much as possible. But he wasn't, from my viewpoint or what my mother expressed, at least in parts of the marriage, an invalid or anything like this. He, at this time in his life, enjoyed a family and seemed to have a certain peace and contentment, and he found his niche of being the family man, which is probably what he wasn't in an earlier period in his life. I don't remember stories, but I remember bottom lines and what my father meant to my mother. And to me, what she expressed was that he was deeper than a comedy clown. That not only was he a genius in his realm, but he had a lot more depth than a lot of people realize. He took his job seriously. He loved an audience, but he worked at making it look effortless. I think he found something he loved, and he felt good about doing it, and he found something that brought him happiness. One of the things that my mother told me was, he told her, I hope Janie in life does what makes her happy, because I have found what makes me happy, and that is the most important thing in the world, to do what makes you happy. I think the worst part is that he didn't live long enough that I could have known him as an adult and asked the questions that I would like to know as an adult about how he felt about different things. But it feels good, and I'm very proud of my heritage. And I think the older you get, the more family means to you.
Curley had several more strokes. On January 18th, 1952, Curley Howard, brother, stooge, and father, died. Biography will continue in a moment here on A&E.
Next week on Biography, Monday, Gilda Radner. On Tuesday, Dudley Moore. And on Wednesday, John Ford.
Any dentist will recommend you thoroughly remove plaque daily, which is exactly what the Braun Oral-B Plaque Remover with its unique cup-shaped brush head does. The alternative is unthinkable. The Braun Oral-B Plaque Remover.
Hello, I'm Roger Mudd. I'm proud to say I'll be a part of the History Channel, which begins January 1st. To receive all of history all in one place, call your cable operator today and begin your historic journey.
You know what? My skin's not only clean, it feels really smooth. And not just because she's a girl. It's because I use Zest. She's old. She knows lots of stuff.
Zestfully clean. Soap leaves a film on your skin, but Zest rinses clean away, so your skin feels smoother than soap.
Zestfully clean. The sooner you start, the smoother you'll feel. I'm waiting.
You're not fully clean unless you're Zestfully clean.
Feel smooth.
Experience the rush at the eye of the storm. Justice in the glare of the spotlight.
It was like an electronic ring.
The riots up close.
We were unfortunate enough to be in the line of fire.
The buzz of the battlefield.
This is no man's land.
See Washington under a microscope.
Everything is fair game.
Danger around every corner.
Bang. Dead.
Today's headlines from a complex world.
I'm Bill Curtis in Hanoi.
The issues, the inside story. Investigative reports. Tonight on A&E.
I use Tylenol, sure, for backaches, fever, but for headaches, I use Excedrin. Why? Excedrin relieves headaches better than Tylenol. How am I going to prove it to you? Well, I could get the medical facts and figures, but you may not believe that. What are you going to believe? Your headache. Don't listen to me about Excedrin. Listen to your headache.
Excedrin, the headache medicine.
If you were AT&T, the old American Telephone and Telegraph, the biggest, most powerful company in the universe, what would you be scared of? If you were AT&T, you'd be scared of only one thing. Me, from MCI. You'd be scared I'd call your customers and show them the savings with MCI, and you'd worry that they'd really like the idea and switch to MCI. Lighten up, AT&T. Don't be so scared of me and MCI. You have millions of customers, and it's going to be years before I can get through to all of them.
Biography returns to the Three Stooges. Although distraught over Curley's passing, Moe, Larry, and Shemp continued to make two-reel comedies and even found time for personal appearances.
For many years, they were the top-grossing short subject series in Hollywood, and they won, the Laurel Awards and these other awards every year that were given by the theater owners to the top-grossing film. So they brought in a lot of money for Columbia over the years.
Unfortunately, major studios were slowly beginning to phase out short subjects. Less time and effort went into scripts and production, and as a result, the end product was sometimes inferior. Moe was hoping he could get Columbia to put the Stooges into features of their own. But before anything could be planned, fate struck another blow. November 23rd, 1955, Shemp was with friends coming home from an evening at the fights.
The other guys in the car started smelling something burning, and Shemp's head had slumped down on his chest, and the cigar was burning his lapel or something. They looked back, and, he was dead.
Shemp had a massive heart attack and died instantly. Moe was grief-stricken. He had lost two of his brothers in 3 years. He seriously considered disbanding the act. But both Moe and Larry were still under contract to Columbia. Moe and Larry thought about continuing as the Two Stooges, but studio heads disagreed, so Moe had to find another Stooge. Joe Besser was born August 12, 1907. He was popular in his own right, having worked in burlesque with stars like Olsen and Johnson and Abbott and Costello. So Moe approached him, and he agreed to be a Stooge.
Moe and Larry, they were the best. I enjoyed every minute of it with them. In fact, I'll show you how wonderful they were. I never liked to be hit with anything. And Larry used to say to me, "Don't worry, Joe, I'll take it." Now, that's the kind of guys they were.
During 56 and 57, he made 16 shorts with the Stooges, which were then shown during the 57-58 season. In fact, one of them, I think, even went into 59. But at that point, Columbia decided that they were going to close their shorts department after a 24-year run. The Stooges were sort of out of work.
A lot of people don't know that even though they were successful with their movie career, they never made any money. In all the years that they worked at Columbia Studios, they never got a raise. From day one until the last day that they worked, they made the same salary.
Supposedly, they were just denied entrance to the lot. I mean, they came back to pick some things up, and they told them, you don't have a contract here, get out of here. They didn't have any kind of farewell party for them. They were denied access to the parking lot and everything, which is sort of sad after a 24-year association. Very heartless, but they decided, well, we'll go on tour, because that's the way they had made all their money in the past anyway, was going on tour. But Besser's wife was ill, and he didn't want to travel around the country and leave her, so they were forced to come up with somebody else, and they came up with Joe DeRita. They tried him out, and he worked out. He became Curly Joe, sort of because he looked like Curly, and his name was Joe, so I guess they figured, well, we already had Curly, we already had Joe, we'll call you Curly Joe, and the name stuck.
Joe DeRita was born Joseph Wardell on July 12, 1909 in Philadelphia. Like Besser, Joe DeRita had been a star in vaudeville burlesque and had his own series of films for Columbia.
They spent 12, 16, 20 weeks a year on the road doing personal appearance tours, and they would do 3, 4, 5 shows a day. And that's really where they made most of their money.
They did an act that hadn't changed in 35 or 40 years. I knew every line of the show.
In 1958, Columbia Pictures released 78 of the old Curly two-reelers to television, and within a year, their popularity exploded to new heights, and so did their salary.
None of them were really aware of it. When they came to Pittsburgh, and their last, the reoccurrence of the popularity after television, they got off the train, because they came by train at that time. I think it was 1959. And they saw all these people at the station. They wondered who the VIP was on the train, not realizing the crowds were for them. They had absolutely no idea of how popular they were.
Joe DeRita brought his own flair to the act.
Obviously, he had big shoes to fill, but he was a veteran performer, too. It wasn't like he was just a nobody. He wasn't perhaps as well known as Joe Besser was at the time when Besser came in.
Most everything was discussed with Larry and Mo, whether they would take something to do something or anything. Not one person made the decision. Then after Joe joined them, Joe was like a junior partner, let's put it that way. And Larry, after a couple of years, said to Mo, this I know, let's make him an even partner. I don't know what the partnership was at that time. Maybe it was 40, 40, and 20. So Mo says, why? We've been for years this way, you know? Why should he get part of the good amount? So Larry says, look, between 20 and 33%. It's not that much difference, Mo. And you're making them feel like he's part of us. Like this, he feels like he's a nothing. He's a drag on it. Let's make him feel. And that's what they did. They made him an even partner. Larry forced it on Mo, because I told you Mo was thrifty. That I didn't say cheap. He was thrifty.
The boys were back on top, and the studio that had fired them in '57 wanted them back. This time for a starring feature picture called Have Rocket Will Travel. The Stooges did several more features between '65 and '69, and their last film for Columbia was The Outlaws Is Coming.
The Outlaws is coming. What a wonderful experience. Our first meeting at the Columbia Ranch one morning quite early, and I went into makeup and got on my Western duds and came out in the street, and I saw Larry Fine sitting in a chair, and I think his wife was yelling at him about something, and then actually the guys were very serious off camera, their demeanors. They were really very serious artists in their own way, and I was impressed with how quiet they were in respect to their screen personae. I think the funniest little incident with the picture that I remember, the main thrust of the plot was that we were trying to save the buffalo, and I was the young lawyer from Boston, and I had the same interests, and that's how we got together. But anyway, so we spent the movie trying to save the buffalo. The wrap party at the end of the movie, Mo says, okay, everyone's invited to my place in Bel Air for a buffalo barbecue. And that sort of typifies these three restless nights. I never really spent much time with him away from the set. People don't do that often in Hollywood. You know, you're doing a series and you spend 18 hours a day with people and you just kind of want to get away from them. It's probably more healthful that way. I wanted to go home with the Stooges every night, but they wouldn't let me.
A&E's look at the Three Stooges will continue.
I won't go. The jungle is impenetrable. Swamps, marshes, jagged mountain ridges, icy cliffs, raging rivers, arctic winds, quicksand, dust storms, torrential rains. I stay here, but I have a Range Rover. Okay, I bring the kids.
Range Rover. No other luxury car can make you this comfortable.
Hey, Flyboy, comfy in there? Unless you check the hard side suitcase, we have a major crisis downstairs.
You thought Coach was bad.
It's a war zone down here. That's why I checked the Samsonite hard side. Hey, isn't that your bag? When you check a hard side, your clothes won't come out looking like origami.
Sir, could you please return to your seat?
Samsonite hard side. Life is hard. Don't go soft. What's this thing do?
Every mother becomes a doctor in her own way. Her medical training starts here.
Doctor will be here soon, honey.
where she learns that for fast cough relief, doctors recommend Robitussin more than any other cough medicine. She specializes in house calls.
How you feeling, buddy?
And always brings Robitussin along. With her Robitussin and her great bedside manner, it's no wonder she has a thriving family practice. Robitussin recommended by Dr. Mom. Which Robitussin is right for you? Ask your doctor or pharmacist.
You can tell a lot about a man by his shaver. The man who uses a bra and flex control appreciates good looks, has the flexibility to adjust to any situation, and he's not afraid to get close. But the most revealing thing about a man who uses a bra is how easy it is to spot him.
I believe this is yours.
Braun, the world's most recognized shave.
He was born over 1,700 years ago in Turkey. Known as Father Christmas, Kris Kringle, Père Noël, or even Jolly St. Nick, this legendary figure continues to bring magic and wonder to the entire world at Christmas time. From his birth to his cinematic debut in 1903 to today's image, Santa Claus.
He's back.
On Biography, tomorrow on A&E.
Biography returns to the Three Stooges. In 1969, Moe, Larry, and Curly Joe started work on a self-produced comedy travelogue series called Kook's Tour. During the last few days of filming the pilot, Larry suffered a major stroke, which forced him to retire.
They were able to patch together a 1-hour version of the pilot, which nothing ever happened with. But that was really the end of the Stooges as we know it.
And once he was able to really handle himself, he was able to speak pretty well again. Because in the beginning, he could not talk. He decided he wanted to go live at the Screen Actors Guild country house. And he applied to go into that. That's in Woodland Hills. It's a magnificent place. And he moved into that, and he lived there for the last 6 years of his life.
There were a lot of other people that were in the motion picture home too that, you know, he got friendly with, and he befriended other people in Hollywood, Ed Asner, the guy from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and a couple other people, Ted Knight, also from that show. I know that they played shuffleboard together and stuff like that.
It was obvious that Larry couldn't continue, so Moe and Curly Joe contacted their old friend, character actor Emil Sitka, to play the part of the middle stooge.
They had played with the idea, and Sitka was supposedly even hired and signed, sealed, and delivered to work on a picture, but, you know, things fell through, and that group that would have been Moe, Sitka as the Larry role, and Joe DeRita as the third stooge never materialized as a group on film.
Moe started to work as a solo. He gave interviews, lectured at colleges, made TV appearances, and even though Larry was still partially paralyzed, he too was able to appear on local talk shows. He seemed to be doing well when he suffered a second stroke, which further slurred his speech, and 2 months later, he had a massive stroke which put him in a coma. Larry died 2 weeks later on January 24th, 1975. Moe was heartbroken over the news of his old friend's passing, but continued to work even though he had contracted lung cancer.
They were trying to work on a film as late as '74 with Sitka again, but apparently Sitka kept getting a call, you know, we're going to film next week, we're going to film next week, we're going to film next week, and then Moe died, and that was the end of it.
Moe died May 4th, 1975, just 4 months after Larry. Moe's passing brought an end to the world's longest-running comedy act. Joe Besser continued to work in TV and films and take care of his wife Ernie until his death, March 1st, 1988. Joe DeRita retired from show business and lived happily in North Hollywood with his wife Jean until he passed away, July 3rd, 1993. So the Stooges are gone, but their legacy of comic mayhem will make us laugh for generations.
To me, the Stooges weren't based on any kind of reality. As a kid, I even knew that. I liked seeing people get hit in the head with hammers.
Then he smacks him on the head like that.
But I've also been able to create original characters based on the Larry voice, like for cartoons like Ren and Stimpy, where Stimpy the cat is, his voice is very much based on Larry Fine, except it's all jazzed up.
As long as there is man on this earth, and as long as we continue to have these repeating events, political, secular, work-related, things like this, you will always have a spot for the Stooges.
I think the Stooges will be popular long after we're all gone because they are poking fun at life.
You know, there are some shows that have that effect. Make people laugh and smile and hit each other.
Frightening!
When the Stooges first became popular on TV in the late 50s, there was a rash of kids bopping each other on the heads and poking each other in the eyes like the Stooges had done. Well, the Stooges themselves came to the rescue. In New York City, for instance, they appeared on a local program that showed their films, and they gave a live demonstration of how they actually had done their shtick, how they had socked someone without really socking them. Their young fans seemed to be thrilled by it. It was like learning how to do a magic trick. And so, I guess we could say, began the era of safe socks. And now let's take a look at what's coming up on our next, a biography.
He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. Now we're taking the ultimate peek in at him, the benevolent and jolly legend who holds the reins on Christmas, the extraordinary life of Santa Claus. Christmas Eve on Biography.
I hope you'll join us. I'm Jack Perkins. Thanks for watching.
Would you play some executive music, please?
When you wore a tulip, a sweet yellow tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you caressed me, was that head?
How do different cultures see Santa Claus?
We'll take a sleigh ride through the life of a Christmas legend tomorrow on a special presentation of Biography.
And now, Investigative Reports is next on A&E.
When you wore a tulip, and I wore a big red rose. I met her in a garden in an old Kentucky town. The moon was shining down.
No! Don't dance out of this position, boy.
The yellow tulip in
Just sing like that.
Wow, 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 wow.